Good afternoon. The Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work on the topic of the local resources for the local economic developments and the presentation of the Manual for Local Economic Development in Territorial Communities, helpful hints and tips and best practices. This event is meant for the local governance bodies, the business, the local government authorities, and all those who are interested in the local economic development. Today we have planned to involve a lot of interesting speakers, very interesting presentations. Some of our speakers will be in online mode. Our event will last for 2 hours, so please send us your questions under the transmission and for the Ukraine Crisis Media Center and also YouTube for the UCMC. We are going to use two working languages, English and Ukrainian. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our participants, Mrs. Susan Kutor, Deputy Director of the USAID Mission, Ivan Lukerya, Deputy Minister for the Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine, and Vitaliy Yurkiv, expert in local economic development, USAID DOBRE Program. Also will be joined by Voldymyr, Vorobej, author of the manual and the Executive Director of the Agency for Economic Development, PPV Knowledge Networks, Ivan Rubskyi, Head of the Sectoral Platform on Local Economic Development and Investments of Amalgamated Territorial Communities Association, Sergey Prohoda, Head of the Beekeepers Cooperative, Beekeepers of Prixomaria, Svetlana Spazheva, Head of the Pokrovsk Territorial Community of Dnipropetrovsk region. Also, we're going to have Olena Kozar, Head of the Media Center Territorial, and Robert Zharkovski, expert of the Foundation for Development of Local Democracy, Director of the Center from the city of Szczecin, Poland. And my name is Irina Malik. I'm a moderator of this event. I'm coordinator of the communication decentralization of UCMC Dobre. This is USAID Dobre Program. And for a long time now, USAID has been a systematic and a long-standing supporter of this reform in Ukraine. It's my pleasure to give the floor to Deputy Mission Director, Ms. Susan Kutor. Can you copy us, Mrs. Susan? Do you hear us well?
Пані Сюзан, запрошуємо вас до слова.
You have the floor, ma'am. Good afternoon, dear colleagues and participants. Thank you for an invitation extended to me to take part in this event.
I'm especially pleased that today's event marks the release of the Manual on Local Economic Development, which is a critical component of decentralization. As we all know, decentralization brings the power of decision-making closer to where people live. And it is vitally important that this includes a framework for improving economic opportunities for citizens, which in turn positively impacts the entire community. It's quite simple, actually. When the economic situation improves and more local revenue is generated, the resources and budgets of local governments increase correspondingly, enabling more and better government service provision. The role of USAID's Dobre activity is to work closely with communities to both strengthen local governance and support economic development. Dobre has provided this support to many communities over the last 4 years, helping them to foster economic development through initiatives that the communities themselves choose. The manual we're unveiling today reflects the experiences and the best practices, the lessons learned over these past 4 years. And it's a collection of models and descriptions of the wide variety of Dobre local economic development initiatives implemented in our partner communities. Many of our partner communities decided to improve infrastructure for farmers, businesses, and tourists, including improving sites for farmers markets and outdoor public spaces. Other partner communities created public spaces indoors, such as co-working areas or business incubators, to encourage entrepreneurship. Some focused on IT or media, while others emphasized very traditional micro-enterprises like pottery, woodworking, or welding. The objective today is to inform communities throughout Ukraine about this manual and the positive experiences it contains, so that they too can engage in local economic development to improve their communities. I sincerely hope that this manual will inspire other communities in Ukraine to take the necessary steps to support local economic growth and to improve the lives of their citizens. And I want to thank the Dobre team and their partner communities for the tireless work in making this effort a reality. Not just the manual, but all of the stories that are included in the manual. I wish all of the communities success as they proceed with their own local economic development plans. Дякую.
Thank you, Ms. Susan, for joining us. We continue our discussion. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ivan Lukerya. Just a few minutes ago, Susan told us about the support. Can you talk about the local support provided to the development of the local governments? I believe that it would be interesting to listen to all our participants. Good afternoon. At last, the issue of the local economic development comes to the fore as issue number one in the agenda of the activities of the local governance, because the local economic development, we mean economic infrastructure for business. We are talking about the efficient management of available resources and the efficient management of local taxes and charges, control over different payments and the what we send to the budget. I believe this is the key issue after the successful completion of the administration of local territories, because local territorial communities is not just something in itself. It has to ensure the further development of local communities. Maybe without saying anything about big cities, but all the smaller cities and communities have to give the answer to the question why we actually have to become amalgamated territorial communities and what we have to do in order to develop further and what is on our agenda, so to say. And then the issue of the national support, etc., etc. Our principle is the peer-to-peer, let's say, support or participation, equal participation. We cannot think about any further development if the necessary steps are not taken at the local level. So what we are talking about, the efficient cooperation between the central agencies, authorities, and the regional and the local communities. So in this case, we can talk about the further development and successful story. So we work in two planes. You're talking about national level. Infrastructure for business and the efficient and the management of the available resources on the local level. As regards in the infrastructure or creating the infrastructure for business, today, in fact, in the state budget, they provide more than enough support for the local governance bodies to create necessary infrastructure. We are talking about different public program aimed at the further development of local territories. We can, let's say, rely upon the sports subvention or the internet or whatever else, but the Ministry of the Regions is the initiator or the provider of the ideas of coordination different policies in order to plan necessary steps both within territories and in this space. There are required resources. Last year, when they said that that one of the priorities for this year was the priority of the local economic development. But we actually came to understand that there are no plans for that in the local communities. That was really a surprise to us. There are some projects, but there is no need to involve the resources. Now we have the way how to involve the resources, but there are no projects. So there are some. I honestly say that this manual we are talking about, which has been actually provided by the DOBRE program, this is the set of those instruments which should be at hand in each community. Just take it and use it, and they are not really expensive. So how much does it take to create some communal form of ownership? For example, the territory of 20,000 strong population, for example. Maybe several millions of hryvnia can be easily obtained if they actually send a request, but for some reason there was no request for that in many cases. So if we're talking about a business center, just a few examples when they actually sent in or submitted their project and create some creative spaces or to create their comfortable territory for their local citizens. So this manual is very good enough. Maybe a bit they did that in the we should expect it earlier. A bit late it appeared, but better late than never, you know. So each city manager, city mayor of each city has to get acquainted thoroughly with this manual. Then if you're talking about second point, management of the resources. Yesterday we adopted the bill regarding this issue when, on the land management. Now we are talking about the accounting, the audit, the work with those who actually is a leaser, zoning, or the change of zoning. Anybody actually can increase the money coming to the national budget. Then the land tax, which hasn't been in the focus of attention since 2017. Now we are working on that, and we hope the support of the parliament will be with us. Now they work with the business. If you're going to create the comfortable conditions for the business, then please register in our community, number one. If you're on the market already, at least register as the natural persons, or let's say the taxpayers. Maybe those are not big money, but anyway, they will be channeled to the local budgets. And then we can create comfortable conditions for you, but we have to explain that to the business. If business doesn't understand clearly the messages from the local governance authorities, there is no stimulus to be registered as a, let's say, a natural person, entrepreneur, or just register within the community. When there is such a dialogue, we can see very positive transformations because they can see reinvestments into the creation of such infrastructure. And the third plan, which I would like to talk about, maybe not obvious for the issue of the local economic development. For example, you allotted some land area for some kind of production, which will occupy several hectares. We have to think that the level of those people who work there, they need certain housing conditions or living conditions. Even if they come for 5 years during the week and they come back home, but even for this 5-day period of time, and sometimes they have to cover 50, 60, 80 kilometers to come to their place of work. Maybe it's easier and more comfortable just to rent an apartment, etc., etc. And for this, we need some kind of cafeteria or restaurant, or maybe some sport grounds to play football or volleyball, something like that. Maybe this is seemingly it's not in direct effect on the business, but creating the comfortable infrastructure, including the social one. This affects a lot the mood and the attitude of local community. Of course, we are talking about providing some additional services to the communities. This is plan number 3. Plan number 4 is strategic planning, which is a very important document which is underestimated by the heads of the local communities. They are skeptical about that, maybe because it was not directly linked to the budgetary issues with this strategy. Now we have this. If we're talking about the new draft law on this specific issue, which sits in the parliament, only in the case we have all those conditions, we will be able to involve the available funds and resources. So this document must be a very good, thoroughly worked out. It must be kind of road map for the next 5-7 years. This is a live document today, but since we do not have an answer what the who, if we do not understand that, we will not move to anywhere. So maybe we can talk about this or another project, but when we answer a question, how can help the state to provide economic development, so maybe you can take care of 2-3 million yourselves. It's not big money, but in majority of cases, such meetings end in nothing, you know. So that's why such manuals, or these manuals which are available today, which have been already published, and those can be considered as road maps for us, you know. And the last thing, speaking about our strategy, first of all, of course, we have to decrease this proportion between different regions. That is why, well, I don't mean to say that everybody else is left behind, but if we are talking about some specific, okay, if just to give you an analogy, you know, the railroad car, as one of the territorial community which biggest potential. When you invest from the state budget into some infrastructure for business in such communities, they become like anchors or magnets for the surrounding territories, which will follow suit. And this will be a positive effect on the situation in the region and in Ukraine altogether. So when we start this work today, this year, next year, now we have about 120, 150 centers for the economic development. Maybe we'll have more project of economic development, which will have the ready support for the territories to further develop. If I may specify, you mentioned that not all of them, not all the territorial communities will become the points of growth. You mentioned 120, 150 of those. So what about those who are not within this category? Well, it doesn't mean that we are not going to provide support to other communities. We are talking about different projects. For example, if you cannot, let's say, provide the development of Apple or Tesla or Volkswagen, but given the smart cooperation between the city and the local territories, for example, there is a certain level of the available capital in the city. And, for example, in some localities, there is a good, accessible infrastructure. So, again, if you're talking about the cooperation between kind of intermunicipal projects, the projects which actually unite 14, 15 communities, we focus our attention on such projects. Recently, I visited the Rivne region. I issued a certificate to the village communities, and they actually amalgamated 14 different communities within this same area, and they obtained 20 million hryvnia from the budget for this as support. And given this smart and reasonable planning, not for the solar stations, let's say, solar power stations, which will create about 20 jobs, not more than 8 jobs, but what we are talking about, let's say, the up to 100 different house yards which will become part of this community. So we have to talk about the cooperation between the village or countryside territories and the urban territories. These are the biggest potential we are talking about. The only thing which I would like to specify here, the ministry, the government, none ministry will do their homework. They have to do their homework themselves. We cannot do anything for instead of you. And then the communities have to understand that. It's time to become adult, to grow up. Okay, you said the program successfully works in the focus 10 regions, and you work with different communities, countryside, village, or small cities with different potential. How you manage to balance between those? Well, we try to balance, and you can tell me whether we are successful in that. Well, we are going to hear the opinion of some of the territorial communities today. But please, those who are listening to us in the YouTube or anywhere else, please be active and put your questions. We'll try to answer those. In order to balance, to provide a balance, what we use actually for this purpose, we use the keep approaches which will satisfy both the small communities with small territories, not very big population with smaller budget on the one hand, on the other hand, the bigger communities. What approaches I mean? Approaches to the local economic development which are being used today. First of all, involvement of different stakeholders and different interested groups, stakeholders, to discuss different issues and challenges. The issue of involving them into the decision-making process. And we are talking, first of all, about the involvement of business to this dialogue. Because oftentimes the communities forget that the local economic development, first of all, means to support the local available business which already operates in those communities, within those communities. Those who would like to support the entrepreneurship and to support the, let's say, communities and prepare territories in such a way so that the potential investor, the local business, can expand their activities, or the investor to come to you. So the opinion of the business is critically important, so we have to remember that if we do not involve business to this discussion, it's very difficult to understand what projects we have to take care of. To support business within the community, we have to hear what the business say. The stakeholders must include the local governance, NGOs, the educational organizations, the youth, by all means, and the role of the local governments in this process. When we started this program, DOBRE program, in 2016, we actually visited the different communities. We had a discussion with local governments, and we didn't have a clear understanding how the local government authorities can support business. We mentioned that, okay, business works, let them pay the taxes, what kind of support we should provide them. But when we start to say that the local business, not from a financial point of view, but in order to further improve the infrastructure or the center for support of business, when they can have additional consultation, where they can buy some additional equipment for their purposes. And while this, we can create the comfortable conditions in terms for the business, and they start to work more efficiently. As a rule, they hire the local citizens. That means that we create more jobs, and we improve the situation with the unemployment, And then we can use this money, which can be reinvested in the same structure, and in the long run, who are the beneficiaries who get the positive effect? The local citizens of the local community. Two more points. By all means, the strategy we have to have strategic plan of development of the community. Without this strategic plan, the projects will not be vital. They will be chaotic. They are kind of they very, very specifically targeted. Number two, there must be somebody who can take care of the issues of economic development. Maybe there is working group for this matter, what kind of consultation, council, you name it. But anyway, it must be a union or association of stakeholders who can discuss different matters and seek for the necessary solutions, and then come up and propose those solutions to local communities. Number two, a community must have a document put on the website with a description of the key resources available in this community. Resource, manpower, let's say, the financial resources, what can be leased, the basic infrastructure after one Ivan was talking about, where they can have some meals, where they can spend the night, whether there is a pharmacy or the barber shop, hairdressers nearby. You would like to involve an investor in your community. You have to remember the investors also are people. They come to you with their family members, and then they have to have their leisure time, high quality leisure time after the working hours. It can be economic profile, economic profile of the community, of the some kind of passport or whatever else. This document has to be, let's say, renovated every year and be put on the website of the community. Speaking about strategy, they have to come up with a program or the plan of economic developments with the detailed description what projects the community would like to launch and implement today, tomorrow, and the after tomorrow. After that, they can actually plan their future. When we work in the communities, we help them to draw up those projects, and usually we manage to finance some of the projects. And of course, there are some other projects which the communities would seek their financial support elsewhere on the different levels. I would like to end my short story with the following. There is the Economic Development Council with the headquarters in Washington, District of Columbia, United States. Every year they have a kind of event which is called the International Week of Economic Development. This year, this event starts May 9. The objective of this week is to increase the awareness about the local projects of economic developments, to talk about those people who on a daily basis work with those issues. So I would like to call upon the Association of the Local Territory Communities co-working, the Center of Development of Business, the co-working groups which have the special divisions for the economic developments of business developments, to see what are the needs of business, what are available resources, and during this information event, so that you could during this week talk about the opportunities provided by such economic development, and what positive result will be provided in the end of the day. Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the author of this manual, Voldymyr Vorobej, who actually gave the useful or helpful tips and hints and best practices. Voldymyr, can you say what's so special about this manual? Because there are a lot of manuals today, different ones. Why we should pay attention specifically to this manual? Who is meant for, etc. Okay, I hope that you can hear and see me. Yes. I would like to thank the Dobre Program to have an opportunity to be the author of this manual. You know, there is a lot of information. Our Agency of Economic Development, PPV Knowledge Network, which I have the honor to head, for several years we've been working with different communities, and we've been developing different projects for the local economic developments, and actually we help them to implement those. And I'm the expert in the issues of the local economic development. Very often, actually, Ukrainian communities, learn how to copy each other's So if my neighbor has something, we have to have this in our community. So we encounter the situation when there is kind of, they actually just copy something. They heard somewhere industrial park or some kind of cooperative or co-working. We need that as well, they say. Sometimes they do not even give the thought to that, whether they really need that, because there are some, whether they have freelancers who are going to use this opportunity co-working, or maybe the local community doesn't have an experience enough. Do you really want this kind of industry which are going to come to you? Do you need this industrial park within your territorial community? Maybe it would be better for you to further develop tourism, or how to turn their local houses into some small hotels or something like that. Very often, unfortunately, such discussions are not conducted. And I'm happy that within the framework of DOBRE program, we got the very good expert support, which allowed us to have some debates and discussion on this issue. And this manual we are talking about, in no way, this is not a manual, actually. And this is a kind of the cross-section of the available situation. When with my colleagues, what we saw and heard while being in the communities, this is kind of generalization of a set of the instruments, rather, using which the communities can see the whole palette, which can be used, So, and we hope that they will be inspired what exactly those local communities really need, not to copy their neighbors' efforts, just to use some critical thinking a bit, and to open wider their eyes, to have a wider or broader vista in order, to select specifically the specific mix or set which will suit this specific community. What we encountered, we saw a community in Territorial region with fantastic caves, when the tourists actually plead us to build some smaller hotels nearby, but they built very simple kind of concrete huts, for them to spend their time. But this is a fantastic opportunity for the economy. Tens, dozens of thousands people can go there, but where they can be accommodated, where they can spend their money. Where is tourist informative center, or the, let's say, cafeterias or restaurants for them? On the other hand, well, we take care of the roads, but the question is where this road is going to lead. We are not against construction of roads, but if you're talking about forested area, we do not need those roads within the forest. And for example, wherever we need some irrigation, and farmers asked us to give them the land, but not only land per se, but let us give us a connection to the Crimean Canal, which could be used for the irrigation, let's say, purposes. We can do something for them, but further on, they have to take their own steps. Maybe there are some more to create more 5, 10, 20 jobs locally. No, sometimes they prefer, to try to find some external investor, to do that for them. So again, I emphasize that they have to see what kind of instruments they need to suit their own needs in the community. There is another problem which we have to talk about. The fear and the centralization is very good, but the communities do not have enough money to provide some estimates or the feasibility studies. In my practice, I also encountered a situation when we had some documents which have not been thoroughly worked out, not perfected, and then those kind of projects or feasibility studies, and then the state has to take care financially to do their job. And actually, in the long run, we come to the to the conclusion that there are no conditions provided for this specific project. For example, an outdated building or outbuilding which cannot provide any services they would like. So I hope that this manual will actually push the different ministries and the governmental offices, for example, to make sure that all the necessary components are there, which are required for the development of the concept, then preparation of the feasibility studies, and then the generation of the necessary estimate documentation. And for something which really is required by this local community. So this we are talking about from alpha to omega process up to the introduction and the let's say commissioning of different projects and providing necessary allotment, necessary land areas, etc., in the cooperation with the smaller, medium, and big business. But again, what really suits the local community when they have the necessary experts and specialists, not only the hard component, but also soft components which are required. So I hope that this manual will prompt how to different prompt necessary ideas to local communities to decide what they really need and to look with wider open eyes, which is being done in Ukraine. And in Ukraine, we have quite a number of different good advanced practices using different instruments. Of course, I understand at the beginning of the road, our European colleagues have more experience, but we also make progress, good progress, owing to the program, DOBRE program, among other things. Thank you. I would like to remind to our listeners that this manual is available, accessible at the UCMC website and this decentralization. Voldymyr, can you focus your answer on the following? What criteria, from the point of view of the practical expert, influence or impact the launch of those projects in different activities? I'm talking about the activity of the people, being close to a big city, availability of the land resources. I would say that the level of the entrepreneurship in this community, whether they have entrepreneurs. Well, I had an experience when we have a post-Soviet, a legacy. We lost the traditions of entrepreneurship. Many communities don't have entrepreneurs, and the bigger entrepreneurs, they're kind of quasi-feudal masters or whatever else, unfortunately. So they behave not in an adequate way. Very often they are the MPs. It is a kind of neo-feudalism. We have to talk about that. Well, you have the entrepreneurs in the good modern, using good modern practices. There are some of them, but in many communities, they lack those, or there are only few of those. But again, if you're talking about the existing SME, small and medium enterprises, and the next question, whether there are people who would like to dedicate their efforts to this issue, whether they have this kind of entrepreneurs drive, we can help those. If there are nobody like that, we have to think who can we involve to do that. Then we have to start to look for the investors, about allotment of the land, let's say areas, and those people who are outside of the community, so to say. You're talking about availability of resources. If it's a small community, there are 10, let's say, private entrepreneurs per 1,000 population. We shouldn't talk about the big road construction or creating industry parks, industrial parks, whatever, because the community and some other things, because this community cannot afford this actually. And then we have to to think about how to obtain the money, kind of subvention, whatever, for the purposes of the operating of the kindergarten, schools, etc., etc. So again, we are talking about subventions from the budget. On the other hand, economic development, there are no local resources. Sometimes they do not even enough money for the, let's say, estimate documentation. For example, 150 hryvnia in their budget for everything, whatever else. This is another very critical criteria. If you have enough funds, you can experiment. If you do not have this, you have to decide what you can afford, what you cannot, but what you can actually bring to the logical completion. Well, land is good. You can provide the necessary land-related documentation and send it to the farmers or the investors if you do not have your own entrepreneurs. Well, those are two major criteria we are talking about when we're talking about the selection of the instruments for the further economic development, local development. Thank you for the answers. We continue the topic of stimulating the local community development, economic development. Now we'd like to give the floor to Rubskyi, head of the sectoral platform, Local Economic Development and Investments Association of the Amalgamated Territorial Communities. Can you hear us, Ivan? Do you hear us, Ivan? Can you hear us? Well, we are in online, so it could be some delay and time delay, but we can see Ivan, maybe a few seconds more minutes. Ivan Vasilievich, we welcome you. And please, the floor is given to you. Would like to hear what kind of instruments is used by your association. Can you hear us now? Ivan, can you copy us? Do you hear us now? Maybe we can continue, meanwhile, this discussion with the next speaker. Meanwhile, maybe our engineers will take care of this problem. So we stand a chance to switch over to some interesting practices in some of the amalgamated territorial communities, for them to share what kind of instruments they use and what are the results of that. Svetlana Spazheva, head of the Pokrovsk Territorial Community of Dnipropetrovsk region. Your community is known for cooperative movement, cooperatives. A lot of different videos have been shot and a lot of articles have been written about that. But you concentrate on the development of tourism in your region. So what are your expectations associated with this development? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, our partners, our colleagues. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to take part in this very important discussion and present one of the instruments, which one of the levers of development of our community. You're talking about the nukes of Ukraine, where they have different castles or fortresses or the recreation centers. They have the right to have further development. But if you're talking about the agrarian potential community, and we are of this kind, we still have the right to develop in this direction, because one of these or another estate is not something which is nice and where you can spend time in fresh air and plain air. Starting from 2018, we started to work on creating organizational terms for the economic development of our community. We based ourselves on the DOBRE Program strategy of development, the program of local economic development, and the Council of Local Economic Development. One of the 4 project proposals for this program was the creation of the favorable conditions for the local business in the tourist environment. And we can conditionally break it down in several directions. The next slide shows the different stages of that. We successfully assess the Pokrovsk community with the development for the stable and sustainable development of tourism. It's, let's say, benefits and the shortcomings. We are talking about the involvement of the local war experts, businessmen, and the different other community members which could be involved in this development of tourism. The coordinators became the experts on the Dobre program, the expert on the from the Dnipropetrovsk state administration, and the head of the let's say countryside tourism in Ukraine. We actually studied the tourist potential of the Pokrovsk community, and we provided the necessary support for the submission of the application. We are talking about the development of Pokrovsky territorial development, territorial community development. We received the tourist product. We provided maps for 4 tourist routes: camping, historical, lore, oriented, etc. We actually designated the necessary points. We provided the marking of the territory. We provided the tourist information center based on the our center of culture in our library. We provided the special heading of tourism, green tourism in the village of Andriivka, and the total cost of the project implemented with the Dobre program was 393,108 hryvnia. The Dobre program 274,000 hryvnia, and the local budget the rest. And again, we took care of the two bases for, let's say, the children-oriented base. Information, tourist science, different indicators, video cameras, many other things in order to involve and attract the local citizens and other citizens to our center. We, let's say, we issued the booklets, Pokrovщина and tourism. The first to use those routes were the experts from the Dnipropetrovsk region, who had to assess whether our community is prepared for development tourist business. After we had the special festival, the village hut was called, under support with the support of the Ministry of Cultures. We had the water, what we call the water tourist team from Dnipro, city of Dnipro, who gave us 9, let's say, grade out of 10. Okay, we are talking about the first support of the local business, small and medium business, and of course a big role is played by the local center. We already opened back in 2019 the restaurant and hotel business, which is close to the river. Also, we work on the further increasing the awareness of the local population, and we are talking about the popularization of the cultural popularity, specificities and traditions of our community, organization, and holding of the annual festivals. Also, we involve all those who are involved, let's say, in the decorative and applied arts, and we involved in both amateur teams and creative teams. We also created another opportunities with the help of the Dobre program. For the growing generation, we provide them with all the opportunities to realize their needs and desires within the tourist sphere. As in any other sphere, when we are talking about the very beginning of the road, there are a lot of challenges which we try to resolve. For example, very low interest on the part of the local population. We do something, we do a lot in order to provide the support those local citizens who would like to realize their their desires and opportunities in this sphere. Their participation, let's say, in different meetings with experts and roundtables, etc. Number two, lack of the activity of the local business. In order to provide, to promote, the services, we organize the traditional fairs and exhibitions, sales exhibitions, and actually, we actually visited one of such fairs, the head of the Dobre program. We provide different meetings, trainings, workshops for the representatives of business with the involvement of experts in the sphere of tourism. We produce information booklet and put them in the site of the information, video stories about the activity. Now we are also taking care of the organizational work to involve our counterparts and stakeholders in order to provide the qualified personnel. And in the end, I would like to say that I'm sure this is only the beginning of a big project, and slowly, step by step, we are moving towards our goal. But in order to reach the goal, we have to move ahead. We have to make some steps. Thank you very much. Thank you, Svetlana. I will repeat the question which I asked at the very beginning. Thank you very much for a very informative presentation. You being the head of the community, you are a pragmatic person. What results do you expect through the development of tourism in your community? At the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that, first of all, we consider development of tourism as one of the directions of economic development of our program, of our community. So today, we are talking about the economy, the income to come to our community. With the previous speakers, we're talking about this, including Ivan. First of all, in order to develop local tourism, we have to provide necessary opportunities for that. Could be kind of hotel tourism, kind of the, let's say, trade, commercial tourism, business tourism, let's say, culinary, let's say, tourism. So this is one of the components of our development of the Pokrovsk territorial community. Thank you. Stay with us. And now I give the floor to Sergei Prokhoda, head of the, let's say, of the beekeepers cooperative, beekeepers of Samaria, Mykolaievsky community of Dnipropetrovsk region. Sergei, can you tell us how we can actually create the cooperative and to develop the entrepreneurship in the community where the different mines are being shut down? As I understand, you're a former miner. I'm still working as a miner. Okay, please tell us. I would like to welcome the participants in our panel discussion. My name is Sergei Prokhoda. I'm one of the founders and the head of the cooperative beekeepers of Samaria, Mykolaievsk territorial community, Dnipropetrovsk region. You already mentioned that Mykolaiv territorial community is the area where the mining area, and recently they started the process of closing or shutting down the mines, and the local population faces the problem where to find the jobs in order to support their families. This challenge actually prompted some of the farmers to start a small beekeeping business. So we started back several years ago. We started to cooperate with the Dobre program. We set up several working groups in order to take care of the development program. I'm a deputy of the local council, and I've been in the beekeeping business for quite a few years now. So I propose to my colleagues some of the ideas I heard during some of the working groups that we could actually create or set up the beekeeping, let's say, hivers cooperative in our community. So first of all, we told about this idea to the head of the local community, who supported us, and we started to work. We started to work in order to set up this kind of hivers or beekeepers cooperative. In turn, the head of this community offered us some assistance. More specifically speaking, the Mykolaiv community should purchase some of the machines for the planers workshop in order to provide whatever is needed for our cooperative. We started the repair work of former, let's say, kind of dilapidated building, and on our own we took care of this kind of repair work. And where we are going to, actually we already located those special planing machines in on those premises. The former head of the Dobre program very visited us, and we communicated with him. We shared our plans, ideas, plans for development, and what we already have done. We also registered as the agricultural cooperative in our community. So this idea actually inspired us to go further. We started taking care of another former administrative building, and now we have there the workshop for pumping and processing of honey. We actually designed what we need for the repair purposes according to the necessary requirements, construction requirements and other requirements. We provided the water supply and the hot water supply, heating, etc. Now you see this building, which houses the equipment which we actually obtained within the framework of the Dobre program. Speaking about the equipment per se, in our specification we included, well, I should thank a lot to the experts of the Dobre program. They actually took care of the necessary set of the tools which enables us to pump the honey out of the hives, process the honey, and create the added value to that. So we now add to honey, let's say, different, for example, cacao powder and other ingredients. They make kind of what we call the cream honey. We already posted using different internet platform. We have our own web pages in Facebook and Instagram. Also, we sell our products within the local shop network. I repeat myself, we already registered. We have all the necessary documents and certificates to sell our product. As a result of this project, we obtained the following equipment: special trailers to transport the hives, the honey pumping equipment, the dispensing units, let's say, in order to dispense honey in different jars, and even the computer equipment, which we obtained as a result of implementation of this project. Speaking about the name of our cooperative, since our territory, our community, Samara River runs through the territory of our community, and then we called our cooperative the beekeepers of the Samara River territory, pre-Samaria. So there are people who would like to join our cooperative, but they are somewhat they delay their decision because they, at the beginning of this story, they have to to invest their own money. So we have to find some kind of sustainable or stable market for our products. Maybe then we can increase the volume of, let's say, the size of our cooperative to take, let's say, to give the opportunity to join our market to other citizens. I would like to say that each of us, we have our wives who help us. For example, my wife helps in the issues of internet development. Wives of my colleagues provide give their hand in, let's say, in pumping the honey, this kind of seasonal work, or let's say distribution of dispensing honey in different jars, etc. Also, we're supported by the local government. They provide us, they lease out some of the buildings or premises. They finance the project. Also, all our plans we discuss with the management of the community. And in the nearest future, we plan to create the demonstrative, creative, let's say, beekeeping area where we can actually, after that, we would be able to further develop this kind of the beekeeping, or let's say, high-rise tourism, which should we pay attention to during the setting up our cooperative. We have to be aware and understand that this is going to be useful for the people that will stand a chance to make money selling their products they are going to make and provide and create the added value. When you're involved, for example, when you study the best valuable practices and also obtain the support from the experts of DOBRE program, we also have to take care of the business plans to understand what objectives or what goals you can achieve. By all means, we have to be registered and create the trademark and certification for your own product or products. Thank you very much for your attention. Should you have any questions further on, or maybe you need some advice, I stay with you. You can see here my contact information. It would be my pleasure to share our experience. Thank you, Sergey. I already have a question. Maybe you know this saying, when there are two Cossacks, there are three military leaders, you know. So does it work in your community? But being serious, how you manage to ensure there is a trust or confidence among the members of your cooperative? Why you manage to do that, and then a number of different other communities fail to do that? Well, number one, again, I'm talking about my my comrades, my colleagues in this business, and our local management, our local management community, management of the local community actually support us, and they provide us with necessary machines and equipment when we started to work in this kind of planners workshop. And then we were joined by the experts of the DOBRE program, and we started to draw up our statute, etc., etc. And we actually proceeded from the initial idea and went all the way through. Okay, Sergey, may all your ambitious plans come true, which you mentioned today, and you should attract many tourists. I hope that this our transmission, our discussion today, will promote or help us to do that, and including our help from the UCMC. So the floor is given to Ilona Kozer. It's my pleasure to give turn the mic to her, not only because she is the head of Territorial organization, Media Center Territorial, because it's very close to the name of our Ukraine Crisis Media Center. So can you say us how you simulate the local citizens for the future participation, especially under the conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic? You have the floor. Welcome to everyone. Can you see me? Yes, we can see and hear you. Okay. I have an opportunity to give the greetings from our community. The Territorial is one of the most ancient nooks in Ukraine. Today, they asked me to tell you about our project, which has been implemented together with the Dobre Program since in October 2019. Our project has been conceived or was conceived in those days, and actually we had the following task: to provide necessary studio for direct let's say transmission within our community in some kind of media center, and provide some other projects, which we actually did in October 2019 with the support of our community and the Dobre program. We started this program. There were only 2 or 3 enthusiasts in those days. And as soon as we did that, we came to understand that to us, people started to join us, gradually but surely. So what we did, first of all, the special film making studio, film shooting studio. We follow the example of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and some of us, they provide us special training, which we understood, after which we understood how to organize this kind of media, video audience or room, and to involve the necessary audience. We did that, and we continue to take care of this public mission of ours in our community. What is interesting, people start to join us. We have more than 10 of those now, to all doing this technology or the equipment became of interest. And some of the local citizens are now trained to be cameramen, or let's say the area hosts or hostesses. And actually, one of our citizens used the equipment we had for the professional video film and something like that. Actually, he works on a very high level, and he actually has a very big future, as we say here. And we have a media space which includes such a function as a public informative function, and number 2, function of the base for those people who would like to further develop and study as, let's say, the entrepreneurs in the advertisement or commercials sphere or marketing sphere. Another zone is our conference hall, conference room. This is intermedia. Whatever happens here, we can transmit in the real time. Well, this is very interesting, because this became also very kind of a common communication space for our community. First of all, it improved the form of the presentation of different events taking place within the community. We are talking about structural divisions of the local government. They start to use our premises to conduct different events. And now you can say it looks absolutely differently. Using the multimedia support, etc., and especially when we had the opportunity to follow what is going on within those premises, within this room, for those who cannot physically be present there. So we actually elevated the level of our work within this community, which is absolutely useful to everyone. We now have quite a few orders, or let's say requests to use our premises to advertise their services or commodities or goods. Or maybe you would like to have a special training session for training their managers, etc., etc. They use our media space, and this potential has become for them a kind of a base for the self-employment of many people who want to start their own courses, training courses. And that was all they needed, actually. Next space for the self-employed people in the humanitarian sphere. we are talking about co-working space. People start to come to us with their own ideas how to organize different studios or master classes and different other individual classes in different areas. Who actually approached us? In fact, those were the people who have their own major job, but they have their dreams or ideas which have not been realized or implemented for this or another reason, different circumstances, And they started to use this space to do that. They started to organize their own, to make sure they have some kind of additional money, and to use this opportunity to use not only to use their idea, but to sell their ideas. And for example, this is not a free of charge recreation circle. This is something which can be branded, it could be advertisement or commercial. We can use the Photoshop, photo studio or whatever else. They start to develop their logos, different advertisement, advertising materials, etc. We managed to do that. People start to join us. They understood that this base can be used for organization of their work and their further development. Since we started our efforts on the lease on the rented building, then since we were joined by different businessmen, entrepreneurs, we managed to keep adrift, so to say. We managed, in fact, when we provided those kind of spaces, we managed to survive, So what came next? Next came this kind of quarantine, pandemic, and so far we are thinking what should be done next. But still, our online space still survived. Our first effort, creating the online platforms, etc. We came to understand how useful that was, because in Facebook we had about 34,000 users, Instagram 10,000 users. So we became some kind of online market for the entrepreneurs who need that in those days. Our studio, Finland studio, became the studio for the online training or education. In those days, we didn't have those Zoom educational trainings, lessons for the senior school students. Also, we provided the possibility to develop the online tourism. So we filmed the most interesting places, most beautiful places of interest. Also, we allowed the businessmen to go online in internet. We explained them how to create the online shop, how to create the Instagram page, etc. We had been doing that for a long time. In other words, this pandemic or quarantine was not in the way of our taking care of our mission. What happened next, and this is the most important thing, and at this point of time I would like to thank all the organizers, because our project became a kind of the lever for the next project. So after decentralization, we had some free spaces in our community. For example, our city hall building, which was used to be used by the municipal government. Actually, we were given the opportunity to move to another premises belonging to the community. Number two, we considerably expanded the space used by us. So, first of all, our conference room became bigger in the new building. Then co-working platform, co-working room became bigger in space. We have already some kind of the special kind of the wardrobe facilities or something like that, dressers. Yeah, and what is interesting, if you're talking about different spaces, we create one children room, but we already have 3 business requests who are prepared to use that space for their business purposes, and those people are prepared to become businessmen or entrepreneurs. And this is very interesting. We are talking about the children, right? Also, we'd like to, in the bottom, you can see where we have the computers. We have such a project within the Dobre program. We would like to move this space to the city hall, and also to use this to increase the space, because already we have 2 more requests or orders from 2 businessmen who are ready to use this space, using the computers, using them, to provide their to organize their own training courses, etc. And we understood that this is something which is needed for the people. And after quarantine, it's not so easy for a businessman or entrepreneur to rent another premises, because they have to pay it all the way, and what happens if those spaces will be closed, So we can't understand that people need their rooms equipped with furniture and equipment. And based on the fact of using that space, professional equipment for training, for educational purposes. So they are interested in that. They actually interested to use those spaces in specific time brackets, so to say, a period of time, because different, let's say, entrepreneurs can use the same space in different times, let's say, and we use this kind of common communication space. We still have it. We are going to think how to further improve that, but we would like to motivate our colleagues and to follow in our steps, because this is really efficient. And those people who would like to organize some group sessions, or children, let's say, investigation projects or something like that, or exploration, projects. And, during this quarantine, during this pandemic, a lot of people went through specialized training sessions. And they are prepared to use their knowledge they have to implement the business ideas. We're talking about individual classes, individual, let's say, approaches or techniques. For example, we have a psychologist from Territorial who needs specific hours to be used by her. We are talking about organizations who need their company's presentations, where to present those presentations, freelancers in the sphere of the advertisement, etc., etc. So everything will be okay, everything will be well, and everything works, and it has the right to live or to exist, and it would be good that we continue in the same level. Thank you, Ilona. If you're talking about your neighboring communities, are they interested in your experience? Do you cooperate horizontally with some other communities? Okay. In our representatives of our neighboring communities come to visit us, to see what is what, from the Berezhan and the Questioncy. They try to understand how we work, first of all, in order maybe to repeat the same for their own population or citizens or community members. And we actually duplicate sometimes the mass media efforts, and there was a kind of explosive effect we had when they saw how it works. We come back to Ivan Rubskyi. If you manage to connect, my connection to you, I would like to hear from your experience. Ivan, you have the floor. Ivan, can you hear us? Maybe there is some technical problem we have. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Do you hear us? You can speak now. You can hear us. Do you hear us? Because we can hear you. We see you. Please start speaking. Unfortunately, he doesn't hear us. Yes, we can hear you. Please start speaking. We try to wave your hand to you, to show that we can hear you. Well, I'm going to speak, but I'm not sure that you can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, you can start, yes. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm really happy that I'm a part of this very important event, discussing a very critical, important issue as the economic development of communities. Again, I would like to say to the organizers and the DOBRE program representatives to say that we realized more than 10 good, very nice projects which made our community more successful in what we are doing. I'd like to thank the DOBRE program for the opportunity for us to work with you. And if you're talking about the association of the Amalgamated Territorial Communities, they actually promote the activities of the territorial community as the component of very powerful and, let's say, efficient self-government organ in Ukraine. Our sectoral platform, which I'm head, we participate in the development of the concepts of different programs, projects, and positions on the issues of the economic development. We conduct conferences, round tables, different training sessions for the amalgamated territorial communities. We created a topical platform, which is a consultative, let's say, body for our efforts. The practical activities of our platform can be broken down in 3 directions. Number one, of course, investments and innovations. And may I say that today, when the communities give the authorities with a limited financial resources, and sometimes even without financial resources, so they doomed all the communities to do that without these investments. That's why our associations continuously channels the different investments and programs, to show how to work with them. The second direction, the management of resources of the community. Now we have some land resources, let's say the property, etc. Speaking about the mineral resources, we do not have the roads. We have the sandy soil, whatever, but we cannot take necessary, let's say, funds for that. We are working on that. Then the development of our communities. Even if there are some of the contracts which had been signed many years ago for 1% of our territory, sometimes we have very big difficulties because it's fraught with with big losses, etc., etc. And speaking about the property, the statistics is not very good here. There are some communities, especially small ones and the countryside ones, when they have very small percent of the property which they can visualize actually. They, for example, if they are not registered in the state registry, the inspector cannot see those. and we again working on this problem. The third direction, very important, this development of small and medium business. And it's classic, we're talking about programs and the loans or credits. Loans are, this is a very limited resource. If you're talking about compensation for the credits. Yeah, the program, we can take care of ourselves about that. We can provide a necessary strategic plan of development of our community. And most important, in my opinion, in big communities which have been created on the basis of the former district centers and other communities, they have to become some kind of the anchor and the magnet for foreign investors. We could see how the industrial parks work in Poland and other countries. And today we have the entrepreneurs, we have big and medium business who are the constant taxpayers, and they generate taxes, and the communities further develop. So we have to focus our attention in village communities on the reprocessing of products, because again, I repeat myself, if you're talking about the budgeting, industrial parks, only the big entrepreneurs can create the jobs. Actually, we take care of the systematic monitoring of the problems in the economic sphere. We prepare the proposals regarding the implementation of some of the projects in the economic sector at the national level. We cooperate with centers and the central executive authority for further economic development of territorial communities. We form efficient position, the single voice of territorial community. I'm not going to read out all the slide. You can see it with your eyes, different discussions, different training sessions, expert consultations, best practices, polling, questionnaire, which was issued. We submitted our proposal to the central executive authorities. We submitted our proposals. The platform also offers the training services. I would like to emphasize that our platform is kind of a site for the communication with different communities, where you can share your experience or gain experience from some of the other sources. We form the expert network for the experts and practical experts. We can provide the necessary advice or, let's say, consultation. We invite not only the heads of the communities, not always they are not have the necessary experience or competence, so we invite the competent persons dealing with such issue. And we are talking about the involvement of science and scientists and scholars and the MPs, representatives of the government, etc., etc. So we call upon everybody to take an active part in the economic development of the communities, because this is of critical importance. Then we provide the polling or questionnaires issued to one of the unique instruments of our association, when we ask the opinion among the leaders of different communities, which give us a better, clearer picture of what we deal with. Then best practices. Everybody, we kindly ask everybody to send in the information about the best practices, also from experience, and those who actually trying to enrich their experience in this sphere. And very important issue which is being raised today during our meetings of our platform, the issue I'm talking about, the development of the industrial parks, or the development of those industrial parks, generation development of plans, social economic development agencies, etc., the businesses, etc. Our organization is a platform where we try to find the compromise decisions between the policy of the state and the needs of the community in order to efficiently develop our economic status. For example, we have an example of Sweden, where the government doesn't does not pass any decision without previously discussing that with the local communities. And the economy works perfectly in that country, and I hope and I believe that we are going to be among those someday. Thank you. And the floor is given to Robert Zharkovski, who is going to tell us and share us the Poland's experience here. Good afternoon, Mr. Robert. You're on the air now, so please, please switch on, turn on your microphone. Yep. It's okay now. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity given to me to participate in your event. I represent here Rubskyi Center, local development, local democracy in Szczecin, one of the biggest, which provides support self-governance in Poland. The center offers the training, education, and necessary support. It's about 100,000 training sessions, and more than 800,000 trainees were involved. We used the potential of our center, especially in such difficult conditions we are living through now. Our approach the approach which we would like to present is closely related to the economic development, the economic market. Because local economic development is very important to us, and which are the instruments. It's very important for integration of the society. And that's why I mentioned before that very important it's instruments. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Robert. Can you actually can you zoom out your presentation? Okay, we are not talking only about infrastructure and space for planning, education. Oh yes, those are very important elements, but we should not forget how we would like to implement all this. This is of critical importance, you know, the style, I mean, in cooperation with our partners, we can do that based on the local law. So the question, who is the best manager? A good manager is those who people are afraid of, who can people hear with love, and but the best one, which offers something which can be implemented. Everybody said that you need money, but the money it's not everything. You need the people and the personnel. But in the process of development, if you're talking about the local economic development, actually we are talking about the social capital, the people who actually determine the temper and the success of economic development. I would like to focus my attention on such an issue. What is social capital in practical terms? Well, in simple terms, I can say that this is an endogenic factor. How we should use this in practice, apply this in practice. I would like to share our many-year, multi-year experience of our work and the results of our efforts. Everything which is recommended, these elements which always are raised during the entrepreneurs' meetings. For example, non-sufficient integration, lack of support, let's say there are some outdated customs, etc., or let's say lack of the confidence or trust prerequisites. And you know that during such meetings, they always talk about the lack of integration when they have different expectations and different ideas. I can dare say that the general barrier to all the communities, irrespective of their size, we have to take care of this development, create the sale market for the local business, and creating the local capital. How we can do that? What instruments can be used which we believe to be of interest and novel nature, novice. You can actually decide for yourselves and simulate this kind of further strengthening of the entrepreneur spirit. We are talking about, we're not talking about the management of companies. We are talking about the generation of habits, so to say. In a different, let's say, people different age brackets. We have to simulate the innovative creativity to create the entrepreneurship companies. For example, business weeks, which is used meant for the school students in the United States, and those sessions are conducted by the, let's say, top-notch experts, and we offer different group works, and they discuss different innovative products, etc., etc. We are talking about, let's say, creating the cooperation not only for some specific target groups, but different groups of the local citizens. For example, business plan for school students, business plan for entrepreneurs, in order how to look for the motivation and they form the ideas for their own company or companies. And this includes the meetings, different meetings, workshops. Again, this is they invite to take care of those business meetings and workshops, different psychologists and business managers, you know, and especially those who already achieved success in business and who are prepared to share their experience with others regarding their own startup efforts and their own companies. Let's say again, it's best to provide, if we're talking about space, to be used. The sport, let's say, gymnasium in the schools would be a very good space for such meetings. You know, there are no special recipe for the entrepreneurship, how to become entrepreneurship. You can only learn how to become such. If we have special curriculum, special programs which are meant for the adult citizens, you know, not only how to avoid the debts, but even what to do those who are debtors already, and to resolve very difficult situations and challenges, and again different other issues. We can use the experience of the city of Gdansk, where they have a very conscious local economic community, when they can actually involve different partners to achieve economic development, to create one the same space for this purpose. Rebranding is also very interesting. For example, this can be used for the cooperation in the sphere of construction trademarks, for the recognition of the special trade brand with the prefix "sol." Not only this branding, or also the common agreement with the entrepreneurs about the let's say, the common product. I can give you an example of our work with when the entrepreneurs organize and enter in the city, the right Monte Carino, for example, in Carlino. Why is those examples, the elements which form those are the communities. We are talking about the trust and cooperation, first of all. Another instrument is the cluster, just in a few words. Such well-known clusters as Sveshva, where the entrepreneurs of one district, through cooperation, create a model which they produce and sell together, and each of those have their specialized task in this common effort. Specialized, actually, I saw this product also in Ukraine, which is interesting. I realized the difficulties if you're talking about the state procurement, public procurement, but most progressive municipality actually started this process already. Kosalin, for example, they introduced the rules, criteria from the point of view not only of the price, but beyond the price issues, where they can improve the situation and to give the opportunity to the entrepreneurs to submit the application or others. The whole story was down to use the money and resources available within the community to let's say to turn the umbrella into a vehicle, So there are no difficulties in spending the money, but in this process we need cooperation in the let's say the we need not only this kind of and it's not one way street. It must be a two-way street, and the process of this transformation would have some sense when the people actually leave their money locally, so to say. They spend their money locally. Of course, there is some opportunities to do that where we actually we leave our heart. We are talking about the promotion of purchasing using the public sites, websites, but also we are talking about putting more. We are talking about those things which actually acquire the economic dimension. For example, the Nights Festival. The region where I was born, actually, they do that. So put your money where your heart, where you put your heart. So coming back to Karlina, where this housing policy taking into consideration the needs of the entrepreneurs, how can be done this? You can ask me. One of the conditions to take the communal housing or the new build is the recommendation of your employer. For example, employer must say or should say, I need such and such person, such same employee. And again, if you're talking about Karlina, this is kind of the policy of distribution of housing, and which is associated directly with the needs of the local economy. And we take the recommendations of the local employers. Not everybody suffered as a result of pandemic, but some of there are people who suffered a lot. People of the advanced age, Our objective is to help business to advertise what they can do. Usually, people of advanced age, they are kind of excluded from the commercial or the advertising space. But anyway, the young people would like to help them to promote their business and to decrease the negative, let's say, negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. And actually, we're happy that we sometimes have very good neighbors who work in different spheres, planners or clock watch masters, or let's say those who glass blowers, or let's say bottle makers. Let's say we are talking about the support of the family entrepreneur business. There is a saying: "Do not be too quick to boast. Do something, you know." So, but we're talking about those who are really successful, and their names or their products are known by many. Again, we have to take care of strengthening the trust. We are just intermediaries. We have to give a chance to further development under the conditions of COVID-19 pandemic. We understand that everybody has his or her own problems, and they require some time to do something about the further development. And the same refers to the governance and the management, I mean. We have to what they use available resources, as I mentioned that at the beginning of my story. And also we have to create conditions which will be sustainable to the pandemic crisis. The changes and transformations are inevitable, and the development must be really free. Thank you for your recommendation. Thank you, Robert, for your presentation here, especially as you were speaking Ukrainian. But you started to talk about the initiatives from the bottom to the top for the economic stimulation. But speaking about Poland, how do you do something from the top to the bottom? We had one of the ministers who told us how it happens in Ukraine. Can you share the Polish experience? The regulation of the simulation of the economic development from the top to the bottom. We have an example of the situation available today in Poland. Very difficult situation under the COVID-19. There are some programs which stimulate through different levels of the state authorities. We have different levels of, let's say, steps of intermediary Zharkovski. We are talking about some support given from the EU, but what I was talking about, the most valuable approach and the most valuable examples we have, which are based on the local resources, on the basis of the community, of the society. This is the goal, to stimulate our citizens in such a way and create such conditions for them so that they can generate the kind of intercommunication between themselves. For them to cover, to embrace, so to say, their own territories with their own ideas and thoughts. Thank you very much for your ideas. Mr. Brian Kemple, Dobre program not always will exist within the communities. As an expert, how you envision the sustainable development of the local communities, Dobre program or some other USAID programs, how you envisage this?
First of all, let me thank everyone who took part in the event today, who gave their time and attention to talking about their work for local economic development and for all the work that they've done with Dobre and for their communities. I appreciate that very much. We all do. In regards to the question, it always comes up, what next? When donor assistance ends, what do we do next? Well, I think the shorter answer is we look inside and we look outside. Looking inside means let's take stock of the resources that we have. And here I'm addressing the communities with whom Dobre has worked for the past 3 years. That's 75 communities in 7 regions, plus another 25 that we're currently working with. So we'll have 100 communities that will have a lot of experience in managing their own affairs and taking advantage of the opportunities that decentralization brings and dealing with the challenges that it brings. So looking inside means take stock of the resources that you have. And first of all, the communities will have gained a lot of know-how through the work in the various Dobre programs, in strategic planning, in improving their services and developing a plan for improving their services, in financial management, and as we've seen, in local economic development. And that's been accomplished with the involvement, the engagement of the citizens and the business community. And that's a very important issue as well, because as people have said, the people in the community are a major resource. We think about the lack of funding, but there are tremendous resources in the form of the residents of the community, the businesses there, people who have know-how, people who have ideas. So to marshal your resources internally, you want to engage all of the people in the community who have something to say, who want to advance the common cause, and get involved. We've seen in the local economic development programs that there's always a cost share component that the community bears. It finds resources to support that. And oftentimes this is with volunteer work or the participation of local enterprises. So those resources are still there with you. So my advice would be to engage them. Through the Dobre project, communities have acquired the Dosvit platform developed by Social Boost, which facilitates social engagement, discussion of issues involving the participation of the citizens in policy-making decisions and so forth. So take stock of all those resources and prioritize what the community wants most, needs most, and what it can do. But then you also look outside. And again, there are a lot of resources outside. First of all, the other 99 communities that have gone through this process, they all have something they've accomplished, they all have some area where they're strong, and they all have something to share with others. So be ready to share with them your experience where you have accomplished something, and then be open to asking people for advice on how to work in another sector, another area, because there's a lot there. Of course, you can do this directly in your oblast. You can contact other communities that have been successful, and Dobre will facilitate that information while we are around. You can also just reach out to them directly. You can work through associations to find common cause. And at the national level, it's better to find communities that share your issues and challenges and problems and present a united front with respect to national policymakers. That can be through an association or otherwise. But the point is to band together with other communities, to see them as partners in a larger enterprise of helping people and communities improve their communities. Of course, donors are going to continue to be here. There are donor programs, and the national government, as we heard from Deputy Minister Lukerya, has a host of programs to assist the communities. So what is important in that case is for the communities to, again, develop a coherent plan with an input of the community on what the community wants to do, where it wants to go next, and then you'll have a much better chance of getting further assistance from donor organizations. And there are many out there who are quite happy and willing to help you. I can tell you that USAID, for example, has approved a new project that will sort of succeed Dobre, although it may work in different regions of Ukraine, that's not clear yet, called Hover Law. There are other resources out there. So if communities first organize themselves and decide what they need and want, and then look and see what is out there. I'm sure they'll find ways to resolve their issues. Thank you.
Дякую, Брайане.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much that you touched upon the issue of cooperation and opportunities, because in some of the communities, they write us about this. I'll try to address those questions to you, Mr. Brian or Vitaliy. Can we use the program Dobre program, let's say, for the first development? And can we actually expand this Dobre program to other regions? Can some other regions take an opportunity to share the experience? I can be the first to answer one of those questions. We are open to let's say to disseminate our best practices. We are to share best practices and experience. Those regions and who are interested in that, we can actually take care and organize webinar. The most important is for you to clearly understand the regions and the communities what specifically they plan to do, and what exactly they plan to do, in what direction. So we are prepared to share the information regarding the techniques and methodology used and the approaches we use. As speaking whether we plan to work in other regions as well, perhaps Brian can try and answer that question.
Well, as far as Dobre is concerned, the decision has been made as part of our extension as to the oblasts that we're going to be working in now until the end of the project, which is September 30th of 2022. And those three oblasts are Chernihiv, Chernovetska, and Zaporizhia. But at the same time, Dobre is looking for various ways to do what we call scaling up, which is to make the accomplishments, the know-how that we've all gained available beyond those Dobre communities. And Dobre is working with the Ministry of Communities and Territorial Development, for example, in developing performance indicators that can be part of a nationwide effort to have objective and standardized measures for performance. And a variety of other ways, extending the DOSFIT platform and so forth, to enable other municipalities, other communities to benefit from what's been accomplished. But there will be no more oblasts beyond the three that I mentioned that Dobre will concentrate on, unfortunately.
Thank you, colleagues, for your exhaustive answers. I would like to thank all the speakers, all those who were patient enough to stay with us all this time. Unfortunately, we have exhausted our time. Thanks to all. Congratulations on forthcoming holidays, and whatever you heard today, cooperatives and the entrepreneurial training. May all this make your life better and happier. All the best to all you. Thank you and goodbye.